This is Writing Strategies by Kimberly Kalasia for EDU 743. The thesis is the goal of 8th grade writing is to ensure students learn how to organize their ideas and formulate complete answers through the use of mnemonic devices and graphic organizers, which will be discussed in this PowerPoint. For mnemonic devices, I use the RACE strategy, which is used for 3 to 5 sentence constructed responses, where students restate the question, answer it, cite textual evidence, and explain how textual evidence supports and deepens the answer. This is just the Common Core standards that you can look at your own time. To incorporate it into the lesson, it should be reviewed as a whole class at the start of the year. Bulletin boards are all around the room. We break it down, we talk about it, and we repeat each element as the class builds constructed responses together. They tell me the answer, I type it onto the smartboard, and then they copy it into their notebooks. We review any think questions that would need a constructed response before we begin our reading, and we talk about what we're looking for in terms of evidence. Whenever we come across it in the reading, they tell me to pause, we highlight and discuss then. You also have to ask frequent questions to break down and review the process. So every time there's a constructed response, it's what's the first thing we do, the class has to answer back, restate the question, etc., etc. To make it meaningful, you have to use it with every reading. You answer as a class at first to practice, and then edit and review frequently. So students correct each other's work, they correct their own, they correct my samples and tell me what's missing. It's posted around the room in bulletin boards, and constructed responses eventually turn into paragraphs for their essays. And that becomes important because as 8th graders, they're learning the foundation for higher level writing in high school and college. This is an example of how you can color code it. So each element is written in a pen or highlighted, and that way students can see, like, do I have the restate or am I missing green for answer? When they correct each other peers, they color code or underline in colored pens or highlight to have the same thing. The bulletin board matches it in different colors to reinforce that. And you can start the use of graphic organizers even here by just having an R on a piece of paper and then lines next to it. And they know that they have to restate and then the A. So it doesn't even look like sentences, but it breaks it down. You have to continuously review this as a whole class. For it to really stick. Students have to read each other's work, and that's when the color coding and the peer review comes in. They can say, hey, you're missing your cite. I didn't have to use my pink highlighter. And then you conference with students. I read everything they turn in. I try to match my editing with the pens as well. So if they are missing cite, I'll write in a red pen, where's your evidence? For graphic organizers, it's the easiest way to really formulate the start of an essay. Students are often overwhelmed with essays, so they have something like this picture over here to break down a persuasive, argumentative essay. It outlines all the components. There's this kind of blurry word bank on the bottom, but it provides things like without a doubt, undoubtedly, clearly, to drive home their point. It breaks down the audience, the issue, the claim, and then the mnemonic device will be brought in to build these body paragraphs, which is all of their evidence. Again, it relates to the subject matter through Common Core, talking about writing informatively and using evidence. You review the graphic organizer as a whole class, and I usually like to develop fun ideas such as chocolate versus non-chocolate candy at Halloween time, Marvel versus DC for comic books, Pixar versus Disney, to build the use of the graphic organizers, and then they get into more research-heavy debates. To make it meaningful, you have to really encourage the use of the sentence starters so students don't get stuck right at the beginning. I don't know how to start is probably the thing I hear the most. It organizes the thoughts that all these kids have. You have to conference before the writing process to correct any mistakes. And then the more frequently students use this, especially in fun ways like that, DC versus Marvel, the Disney versus Pixar, the funner and more familiar it becomes for kids. I like to try to color code the elements as much as I can. These are some other friendly, user-friendly, persuasive writing graphic organizers. They can be put on bulletin boards to reinforce the skills. They can be turned into a giant bulletin board. The use of sentence starters helps. And again, it just organizes and visualizes the ideas for the kids. You have to conference with students before having them complete the essay. This gives you the opportunity to catch any mistakes. But the biggest problem with conferencing is that if there's 22 kids in a class in a 45-minute period, by the time everything is settled and the class starts, and then by the time you have enough time to kind of clean up and put everything away, you're given about 2 minutes per kid, and that's really, really challenging. So you have to be able to review the evidence as a whole class, figure out ways for them to work in peer review, to look for avoiding repetition, and discuss as a whole class if a source is reliable to cut down on mistakes. Once the conferencing happens, you need to discuss next steps for turning the graphic organizer into either a paper or a debate. The benefits of graphic organizers are that they visualize and simplify ideas. It organizes ideas in a logical way. The sentence starters really cut down on frustration or knowing how to start, and it increases comprehension, student engagement, and is especially helpful with the SPED population in a classroom. So in conclusion, in order to prevent frustration and fear in the writing process for students, the implementation of graphic organizers and mnemonic devices are key to helping students organize their thoughts and begin writing. Thank you so much for your time.